Forget the velvet capes. If you landed at Queen High, then, wait, let me check my notes, 1340, your first sensation wouldn't be majesty, it'd be the gag reflex. Hollywood gives us soot. Archaeology gives us Trichuris trichiura, whipworms, millions of them. The streets were basically open-air intestines. I was looking at soil samples from the Thames shoreline earlier. It's not just mud. It's a compressed layer of tanners' chemicals, horse offal, and rotting rushes. Every step was a gamble with a broken ankle or a fever. It wasn't atmospheric. It was a biohazard. Let's talk about the bridge. Not the postcard version. The one from the 14th century that groaned under the weight of 200 houses. It was a stone canyon. You'd enter through the great stone gate at the south end, heads of traitors rotting on spikes above you. Not plastic props, actual leathery skin stretching over bone in the wind. People would just walk past them, like they were looking at a street sign.
The noise. My God, the noise. Imagine 1,000-pound carts with iron-shod wheels grinding against uneven Kentish ragstone. No rubber, no suspension, just a bone-shaking clack, clack, clack that vibrated up through your molars. And the great stink wasn't just a Victorian thing. In 1340, the Fleet River, which was basically a glorified ditch, was so choked with animal carcasses and waste from the tanneries that the water actually stopped moving. It just sat there, fermenting. I was reading an excavation report from a site near Billingsgate. They found layers of floor rushes. See, they didn't sweep. They just threw fresh straw over the old filth. Underneath, a microscopic ecosystem of plague-carrying fleas, lice, and half-eaten fish bones. It was a compost pile you lived on. You're not wearing those sturdy, thigh-high Hollywood boots either. Archaeology shows us most people wore turn shoes, cheap, thin-soled goat leather. Within 20 minutes of walking, the cold, salty slush of the street was soaking into your skin. If you even had hose, most didn't. Wait, I forgot the pigs. There were laws against them roaming, sure. Royal proclamations from Edward III. Did people listen? Absolutely not. Imagine a 300-pound sow charging through a crowd of pilgrims because someone dropped a bit of salt cod. It wasn't quaint. It was a riot in slow motion. You're trying to navigate this while dodging slops, that's the polite word for human waste, being chucked out of a second-story window. Gardyloo is a fancy myth. They didn't shout, they just threw it. You just hoped your hat was wide enough. Actually, looking at the 1340 tallage rolls, the density was insane. We're talking 80,000 people crammed into a space smaller than Central Park. You weren't traveling, you were colliding. Listen, you didn't walk across London, you survived it. If you wanted to get from the Tower to Westminster in 1380, you had two choices. Both sucked. You could walk the Strand, which was basically a series of massive, aristocratic mansions with their backs to a muddy track, or you could take a boat. Most people took the boat. The Thames wasn't some majestic waterway. It was a 200-yard wide open sewer that functioned as the city's main artery. And the watermen? They were the Uber drivers of the 14th century, only more aggressive and likely to dump you in the drink if you didn't tip. They'd scream, "Oars! Oars!" at the stairs, these slimy, moss-covered wooden docks like at Queenhithe or Billingsgate.
You'd step into a wherry, a skinny little rowboat, and pray. Why? Because of the bridge, London Bridge. Forget the nursery rhyme. It was a 19-arch stone monster that acted like a dam. The water didn't just flow under it, it shot through the narrow gaps. There was a 5-foot drop in water level from one side to the other. It sounded like a permanent thunderstorm. If your waterman was drunk, and he probably was, considering the water was undrinkable and everyone lived on small ale, you'd shoot the bridge. Basically, whitewater rafting in a tunic. Plenty of people drowned right there, in sight of the shops selling expensive spices. Just bloop, gone. No one stopped to help. They had errands. Wait, I need to mention the mud again. Not just dirt. Archaeologists call it anthropogenic deposit. In 1988, they did a dig near the Walbrook stream. They found layers of what can only be described as medieval concrete, a mixture of horse manure, straw, wood shavings, and heavy metals from the smithies. Lead, mercury. It was toxic. If you had a cut on your foot, you were dead in 3 days. Sepsis didn't care about your pilgrimage. And the smells. It wasn't just stinky. It was layered, like a lasagna of rot. You'd walk past a vintry and smell fermenting wine, then 5 feet later, you're hitting the shambles, the butcher's row. They had a rule in 1369 that butchers had to take the offal to the midstream of the Thames to dump it. Did they? Rarely. Usually it just sat in the kennel, the gutter in the middle of the street. Blood, intestines, gray-green slime. Anyway, hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the fact that you live in a world with antibiotics and paved roads. Seriously. My engagement metrics are as depressed as a medieval peasant during a bad harvest. Subscribing helps me keep buying these obscure 600-page excavation reports. Back to the streets. Imagine the lighting, or the lack of it. If you're traveling at dusk, you're basically blind. There were no streetlights. None. A few wealthy houses might have a flickering crescent lamp outside, but mostly it was pitch black. The city had a curfew. The bells of St. Mary Le Bow would ring, and the gates would slam shut. If you were caught out, the watch, mostly old guys with sticks and a bad attitude, would haul you to the Ton, a nasty little prison on Cornhill. You'd stay there until morning, or longer. But say you're out. You're navigating by touch. You're feeling the jetties, those upper floors of houses that overhung the street. In some places they were so close together you couldn't see the stars. It was a tunnel of damp wood and the sound of rats, big ones, the rattus. They didn't scurry, they owned the place. And then there's the social violence of the road. There was a rule. The person of lower status walked in the kennel, the filth-filled gutter, and the person of higher status walked to the wall, under the eaves of the houses where it was slightly drier. If 2 people thought they were the same status, that's how you get a sword fight in the middle of Cheapside at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. It happened all the time. 1320s court records are full of person A hit person B with a misericord dagger because they wouldn't move over. It wasn't just physical danger either. It was the psychological weight. You're walking past the Elms at Smithfield. You see a guy being hanged, drawn, and quartered. Not a movie set. A real human being being disassembled. The crows are there. The smell of burning hair. You just keep walking to buy your wool. You had to. I'm looking at a map of the 14th century wards. Farringdon, Vintry, Bread Street. Everything was specialized. If you were in the wrong place, you stood out. You're a stranger? People stared. They didn't like strangers. You needed a host to vouch for you. Without one, you weren't a traveler, you were a vagabond. And vagabonds got their ears cropped.
And the footwear. I keep coming back to this. We have this idea of sturdy leather. No. Turn shoes were literally made inside out, then flipped. They had no arch support. They were basically leather socks. After 3 miles on the pavage, the rough cobbles paid for by a specific tax started in 1280, your feet would be bleeding. Not sore, bleeding. Every step was a gamble with tetanus. Let me check my notes. Yeah, the 1348 census, well, not a census, but the clerical tax records, showed the sheer density of the stalls. Traveling wasn't a straight line. It was a zigzag through fishwives, wandering friars, and illegal stalls selling poutlows, cheap, bad cloth. You're being yelled at in 3 different languages: Middle English, Norman French, and Latin. It was a sensory overload that would give a modern person a panic attack in 4 minutes flat. It was loud, it was wet, and it tasted like copper and smoke. You weren't touring. You were surviving the distance between 2 points. Every single day. No wonder they drank so much ale. You'd have to. Sunset. The great bell of St. Martin-le-Grand starts. It isn't a signal to head home for a cozy dinner. It's a threat. Clang, clang, clang. Everything, and I mean everything, stops. The fishmongers? Gone. The beggars? Vanishing into the lay stalls, the literal dung heaps. The city gates, these massive rotting timber and stone jaws, they start to creak shut. Ludgate, Newgate, Bishopsgate. If you're on the wrong side of that wood when the iron bolt slides home, you're not a traveler anymore. You're prey. Wait, no, it's worse. It's the silence. The city that was screaming in your ear 5 minutes ago goes dead. Pitch black. Not city dark, where there's a glow on the horizon. I'm talking primordial, can't see your own hand in front of your face black. There are no streetlights. Not until 1417, and even then it was just a few pathetic candles and lanterns. You're standing in a maze of overhangs and jetties that block the moon. Then you hear it. The boots. The marching watch. 2,000 men, sometimes, carrying cressets, iron baskets of burning fat. They aren't there to help you. They're there to make sure nobody is moving. If they find you, they don't ask for ID. You're going to the tune. It's a literal cage, a wooden prison on Cornhill for night walkers. 13th century records show people were thrown in there for just being outside. Vagrant at an unseasonable hour. That's the charge. The city becomes a trap. The same streets you walked at noon are now unrecognizable. You trip over a dead pig. You slide into an open sewer, the Fleet, which is basically a slow-moving river of industrial waste and human misery. Your turn shoes are soaked. Your feet are freezing. And the smell? It's different at night. It's heavy. It's damp. It's the smell of a place that's been rotting since the Romans left. You realize, shivering against a damp stone wall near Dowgate, that Hollywood's atmospheric fog
is actually just the stench of 300,000 unwashed bodies and open graves settling in for the night. You aren't a protagonist. You're just a statistic waiting to happen. There's no music, no cinematic lighting, just the cold, the dark, and the very real chance you won't see 6 a.m. So, next time your Uber is 4 minutes late or the hotel Wi-Fi dips, take a breath. Look down at your feet. Are they currently soaked in pig blood and human waste? No. We traded the raw, suffocating dark of 1380 for LEDs and GPS. It's sterile, a bit soulless, I guess. But I'll take a boring layover over a night in the ton every single time. History is just a nightmare we're lucky to have woken up from. Hit the button if you're glad for plumbing. I'm out.